Hello and welcome to this segment of Piecing the Ruler Revolution Way. I am Patty Nethery, owner of Ruler Revolution and the inventor of a dozen different quilting rulers. In this segment I'm going to show you how to make multiple units of a popular quilting unit that we have traditionally made one at a time. Also, these units have never really had a name. They're only referred to as a rectangle with triangles at one or both ends. So I have given them a name and they're called Sticks and Stones units. The old-fashioned way of making this unit was to start out with one rectangle and two little squares. Mark a diagonal line on each of the little squares. Position them on the large rectangle and then sew them on the diagonal lines. Well, this is akin to the snowball block in that you would have to worry about your sewing machine trying to eat these little corners, plus these blocks would end up slightly skewed when you were finished. So we will no longer use this old-fashioned method now that we have the Sticks and Stones rulers by Ruler Revolution. And the rulers look like this. They come in two different sizes. There's the 2-inch width and the 2.5-inch width. And both of these rulers can be used to make units up to 12.5 inches long. On my design board behind me, I have some examples of the 2.5-inch units. And basically with this ruler, you can make the unit where you have a mirror image of the ends, where they run parallel to each other, a picket fence unit, and then you're not limited to 2 different colors of fabric. You can actually use 3 different colors of fabric. And you can even make a slanted diamond. In a moment, I'll show you how to make a slanted diamond. But let's just say that you want to make these units here, and you might recognize these for housetop blocks, Christmas tree blocks, similar to the Christmas tree blocks that are on this quilt hanging on the wall. The way that's accomplished, you start out with one large rectangle and 2 smaller rectangles. For this demo, this rectangle is 6.5 inches by 10 inches, and these are 2.5 by 10 inches. Put right sides together with your small rectangles on top of the big rectangle. Take the Sticks and Stones ruler, lay the ruler on the fabric, and mark a line in these diagonal markings that have little red arrows on them, and then also the vertical lines. Slide the ruler up and mark again the diagonal lines that have the little red arrows on it. And I did the little red arrows when I made this ruler just to give you a sampling of what you can do with the ruler and to make it very easy to use the first time out. Once these units are marked, take it to the machine and sew on the diagonal lines going back and forth. When you get to the end, sew again back and forth. Once you have the units sewn, cut them apart on the vertical lines that you've drawn, and you'll end up with 4 of these units whenever you press out the corners and trim the little ears off. Now if you want to end up to where your triangles are parallel, when you do your markings, you will mark the markings going the same direction, top and bottom. And still you would also draw your vertical lines. Now to sew this, you would sew across the diagonal line, drop down, sew, drop down, sew, drop down, sew. Come to the bottom, do the same sewing sequence until the end. Again, take your ruler, and any straight edge will do. You don't necessarily have to use your Sticks and Stones ruler to cut these apart, but it does work. You'll cut on your vertical lines, and you'll end up with 4 of these units. To make your picket fences, your picket fence units can either go with the triangle on this side of the unit, or it can go on that side of the unit. So you would make that determination whenever you're marking your fabric, and you would only mark one 2.5-inch strip. There's no need to mark at the bottom because you don't have anything at the bottom. So mark your top unit, do your same simple sewing that we've been doing up here, cut your units apart, and you end up with a picket fence. Now if you want to use 3 different colors of fabric, the only change is just adding that 3rd color of fabric. So I will show you how to make the slanted diamond unit. That unit is very popular right now in a lot of different quilting patterns. It works really great whenever you're using it for a border. The slanted diamond makes a really neat effect if you use that unit around a square block. And I have some examples that I'll show you here in a moment. But I'm going to make the little slanted diamond unit, and it's going to look like this. So I start out with my large rectangle that's 10 10 inches, and it has to be 5 inches for this technique to work. And then these units are 2.5 by 10.5. I'm going to take a glue stick, and I'm going to put just a little bit of glue in the seam line on the top and bottom of my large rectangle unit. And this way, this will hold my smaller units and smaller rectangles in place as I'm sewing. So I position the little rectangle on top of the big rectangle, press it down, and then the same with the bottom rectangle. And you want to make sure that these will meet in the middle as I show here. With the Sticks and Stones ruler, I'm going to lay the ruler on the fabric, and I'm going to line up the top of the ruler with the top of the fabric. And I'm going to draw a diagonal line in each one of these little diagonal markings, as well as the vertical markings. And I'm going to do this so that we have split diamonds going different directions. And once I have it marked, and I'm going to mark all the vertical lines, top and bottom, I'm going to slide my ruler up, and I'm going to mark the bottom markings, making sure that the bottom marking matches what I've drawn at the top. So this particular unit goes straight across this way, and so I'm going to mark this one the same. This one slants down, so I'm going to mark this one slanted down. This one slants up. This one slants down. So once the unit is marked, it looks like this. Now before I go to the machine, I'm going to place just a couple of pins in this unit to make sure that it doesn't move on me. And I'm just going to do straight plain stitching on these diagonal lines. And as I get up to the middle, I'm going to drop my needle down in my fabric and rotate my unit and line up to sew down the next diagonal line. And then when I get to the bottom, the same thing. Now traditionally, as I mentioned, we make these units one at a time. But using this technique and the ruler, you can make a minimum of 4 at a time, and you're not limited just to the width of the ruler, as you can cut your strips as long as you want them. And then as you mark, you would just take your ruler, mark on your strip, raise it up, move it down, mark again. So the strip can be any length that you want it to be. Once I sew to that side, then I'm going to turn my unit, clip my thread here, sew the bottom. And again, I'm just sewing to the outside edge, turning, sewing to the inside edge. And then when I get to the inside edge, I turn and sew to the outside edge. That's all the sewing there is to it. And once I have it sewn, I usually just take it and give it a quick press with my iron. And then take it to your cutting board. And I'm going to cut the units apart on the vertical lines that I drew. And as you can see, I'm going to end up with 4 units. And the units are the split diamonds. And then I'll press it open on each corner. And then the last step, just like the snowball ruler, is to trim off the ear at each end of the unit. And I trim off, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. and you end up with a perfect little slanted diamond unit. Now this is a lot easier than making those units one at a time, and they're not skewed out of shape like the old-fashioned method. They're ready to put into your project. So again, we're not doing the old-fashioned way. This is the unit that I just made, the slanted diamond, and the slanted diamond unit that I made, you can slant the diamond going either way in the middle, as you can see here from this example. The other examples that I have here. And remember, the units can be made up to 12.5 inches long. That is the length of the ruler. So you can have the units to where the corners are parallel to each other. You can have units where they are a mirror image of each other. You can have images sewn like this that are parallel to each other. Another example of being parallel going the opposite direction. The picket fence unit. And again, the picket fence units can go either direction as these samples show. So I hope you've enjoyed this segment of the Sticks and Stones ruler, and you'll notice these quilts that are around me here are made using this ruler. As I mentioned previously, the little Christmas tree blocks here are made with the Sticks and Stones ruler. This little quilt back here is a snowball in the center and has a picket fence unit surrounding the snowball unit. And then these quilts over here are made with the Sticks and Stones ruler. You can see this is a unit where they're parallel to each other, and there's 3 of them put together. There's 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, which makes your block. And then this is just another variation of using that ruler. But these rulers are available online. They're available through the major distributors, and we invite you to visit our website at rulerrevolution.com, or you may give us a call at 936-520-1928. Thank you.